Giorgio Cafiero is the CEO, Gulf State Analytics and professor at Georgetown University. Is now joining us live on this broadcast. Thank you very much for making time for us. We are getting reports that Donald Trump, President Trump, is about to sign the executive orders at the arena, something that has never happened before, but is about to happen.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me on your network. Good to be with you. I think everyone who listened to the inaugural address today sort of agrees that President Trump is trying to hit the ground running. You know, he had some very strong messages. He's certainly sending messages to his constituents here in the U.S., sending messages to leaders worldwide. I think in light of the very recently implemented Gaza ceasefire, Trump feels as though he's in a position to take advantage of some momentum. He is obviously taking credit for that ceasefire. I think to a significant degree, it's very justifiable for him to take that credit for the ceasefire. And I think he's trying to really let everyone know that his presidency has begun and he is moving ahead full speed with his agenda.
Mr. Cafiero, he made two different speeches. One was the inauguration speech. Another was a speech to his friends at the Capitol Hill and at the luncheon. And now he's going to address his supporters at the Capital One Arena. What do you expect he will tell his supporters?
Well, you know, over the summer, there was that assassination attempt on Trump. I think that was a really defining moment for his 2024 campaign. I think he is really advancing this narrative that, you know, he was a victim of this assassination attempt and that he ultimately triumphed in this campaign. He won the popular vote, which definitely gives him quite a bit of a mandate. You know, I think I'm probably quite a bit older than you, but in my lifetime, this is only the third time a Republican had won the popular vote in a presidential election. So I think his message is that this quote unquote golden age for the U.S. began today. He has been very, very critical of the Biden administration's record, whether we're talking about immigration, economy, healthcare, foreign policy, dealing with emergencies here at home in the United States. And I think his message is that today marks the beginning of his presidency, and he intends to set the U.S. on a different course. Of course, how much is going to actually change, the extent to which this rhetoric is going to be translated into action that delivers tangible results, all of that remains to be seen. But this is Donald Trump's day, and his message is that there is change in leadership and that the United States is going to move in a new direction. He's, of course, a very controversial and polarizing president. He has his supporters. There are also many in the U.S. who despise him and have hatred for him. It's very divisive, but right now is a day for him and his supporters to celebrate the victory and day one of Trump's second term.
Sort of like living in the moment. Mr. Cafiero, let me ask you this. We do understand that the Senate Armed Services Committee has just voted to advance Pete Hegseth's nomination to serve as the Defense Secretary. Now, the committee voted in favor of Hegseth by 14 against 13. That's a very thin margin. But anyway, it does confirm that this now proceeds to the full Senate for confirmation. And this is one step closer to having Trump's cabinet members confirmed. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about his nominees. What do you make of the Foreign Secretary, for instance, Marco Rubio?
I think in the mainstream media, there's a general depiction of Marco Rubio as being one of the more mainstream figures who will be serving in Trump's second administration. The mainstream media certainly seems to emphasize a lack of experience or maybe a lack of expertise on the part of many individuals whom Trump has selected for high-ranking positions. But when it comes to Marco Rubio, I think much of the sort of the mainstream media, much of the foreign policy establishment here in Washington seems to see him as a public servant who's been in the U.S. Senate. I think, if I remember correctly, he was elected in 2010. So I think he started serving in the U.S. Senate in early 2011. A general view that Marco Rubio is will be one of the more experienced cabinet members. And I think he is probably going to stand out in the eyes of the mainstream media for that reason. That being said, let's keep in mind, Trump is not afraid to fire people. We saw that during Trump's first term. So all these people who are going to be serving these positions beginning this month, I mean, we don't know how long they're going to be around. Time will tell.
Time will tell indeed. What about Pete Hegseth? He did have some trouble during his confirmation hearing, and there was a lot that was revealed during that hearing, with some people saying that he's not competent enough to run the defense department. In your own view, what do you make of his choice, of Trump's choice as Pete?
Obviously the decision to pick Hegseth to be the Pentagon chief, the next Secretary of Defense, was quite controversial for a whole host of reasons, different things that Mr. Hegseth has said over the years, issues of his personal life I don't care to discuss on this program, but all of these issues made him very controversial. The Democrats railed against him very hard. But I think what we can say is that Trump probably wanted to pick Hegseth because he sees him as someone who will be very loyal to Trump. Hegseth has been a very big supporter of Trump for a number of years, and I think that was probably one of the main features of Hegseth that was so appealing in the eyes of President Trump.
Mm-hmm. What about the tech billionaires? Because this is, I think, something else that most people have been talking about, because these tech billionaires were at the inauguration ceremony, something that has never happened in United States history. And there are very many people who are also saying that there's a significance to that, and Trump was trying to send a message to the world. What message was that?
Well, these are new times, and Donald Trump certainly had many unconventional and unprecedented approaches to foreign policy during his first term. I think we're going to see that this time around. And as a geopolitical analyst who focuses a lot on U.S. foreign policy, I couldn't help but note, as did so many other people, that Elon Musk has played a very important role in terms of engaging leaders from many, many different countries. Again, this is unconventional. This is not how past U.S. administrations have conducted foreign policy, but this seems to be what we can expect from Trump 2.0. I think Elon Musk is going to be an incredibly important figure in his administration, certainly a controversial one. But Musk has many connections all over the world. He's done business in many, many countries. And there are, his unique cards that he has. And he's going to certainly be a very, very interesting figure in this second administration, regardless of what official or unofficial roles he ends up playing.
Mr. Cafiero, something also very interesting is that some leaders have started to react on Donald Trump's inauguration speech. One of them is the Panamanian president, who says that Panama belongs, or the Panama Canal belongs to Panamanians. And we do expect some more reactions from various leaders, including the Mexican president. But what do you make of Trump's speech when it comes to the Mexico border and also the Panama Canal?
Well, in last year's presidential election, immigration was obviously one of the major issues in play. Trump made a point throughout the campaign about how he would change the policies in relation to the U.S.-Mexico border, our southern border. And it makes a lot of sense that on day one, he would focus a lot on this issue, sending out a message to his supporters that he is going to clamp down on illegal immigration, undocumented immigration, whatever we want to call it. And I think there's going to certainly be quite a bit of tension between the U.S. and Mexico during these upcoming 4 years. This is not just about border-related issues, even more symbolic matters, like him talking about renaming the Gulf of Mexico the American Gulf. When it comes to the Panama Canal, this is obviously something that became sort of a hot-button issue quite recently. I think Trump is using rhetoric that sort of reminds many people in the Western Hemisphere of sort of the Monroe Doctrine, the foreign policy of Teddy Roosevelt, reminding many in the hemisphere of sort of classic sort of 19th century U.S. expansionism in the hemisphere. I see a lot of this also within the context of great power competition. Trump's second administration is going to certainly focus on countering China. And it seems that Panama, and specifically the Panama Canal, is set to really be a flashpoint in U.S.-China great power competition. Of course, U.S.-China great power competition will not just play out in the Western Hemisphere in Central America, but throughout many regions of the world too, whether we're talking about the Middle East, Asia, Europe, so on and so forth.
Mr. Cafiero, now that you say that, how is Donald Trump going to maneuver through the frictions that you talk about? You talk about China, you talk about West Asia, you talk about other areas that Trump did speak about during his campaign days, but now there's one addition, Taiwan.
Well, of course, Trump is very transactional. He's also notoriously unpredictable, so it's not always easy to, it's not always wise to make bold predictions about what he's going to do. Having said that, I think it's pretty safe to say, as I mentioned a moment ago, that countering China is going to be a key focus. It's going to be a high priority for his second administration. I would not be surprised if U.S.-China tensions over the Taiwan issue heat up during these upcoming 4 years. At the same time, Trump could very well be willing to make some big compromises with China, to strike some deals with Beijing, and we have to see how those play out. But again, I would just restate that Trump is very unpredictable, and I think any analyst who's trying to make predictions about these upcoming 4 years should be very modest and very humble when doing so.